Okay, so yesterday we were looking at reflections over the line y equals x. So the line y equals x looks like this. We talked about how to get that line, and we did reflections over that line, and we found that the rule, if we had all of the points, was to switch x and y. Then the last thing that we did was we flipped the line around, gave it a negative slope, and looked at y equals negative x and flipped points over that line. And we found that the rule was to switch x and y and to change both of the signs. So we're going to do another one of those and then add on some new things. So let's take a look at number 4. So it says we're going to reflect it across the line y equals negative x. So y equals negative x is the one that goes down. So you start in this corner, and it's going to have points like negative 5, positive 5, negative 4, positive 4, like that. And then over here it has 1, negative 1, 2, negative 2, 3, negative 3. So your coordinates are the same, except one of them has the opposite sign. So it's super important that we learn how to draw these lines, because that's the line that everything is going to get flipped over. And I also think, just based off what I've seen so far, that it's really important that we remember the rule and how we're going to switch things. So we said that the rule for this was you start with the original x and y, and then we're going to switch the x and y around and change both of the signs. So we'll just write that underneath this graph, and then we'll actually do it. So I always think the ones that are on the line, that cross the line, are a little bit harder because we have to put points on both sides. So let's just start with the coordinates, because I think for some of us we really need those coordinates. So what are the coordinates of point U up here?
Oh, 1.
So it starts at 0 and then goes up 4. So 0, 4. So if I'm using my rule, let's go down here and kind of make a little table. We've got room. So if I'm starting with 0, 4, what I'm first going to do is switch those, do 4, 0, and then change all the signs. Changing the sign on 0 doesn't really mean much, but changing the sign on 4 would. So that means that my new point is going to be negative 4, 0. So negative 4, 0 would be right here, and I'm going to label that U prime to let me know that that's going to be the new point for U. And if you're looking at this line, I like to turn it this way. U's over here, U prime's over here. They should be the same distance if we drew a line perpendicular like we talked about when we first started reflecting. So that looks like it's probably right. Okay, so let's do our other points. So let's look at E next. So E is left 5 and up 2. So negative 5, 2. When we switch that around, first we're going to switch the numbers, the 2 and the 5. This was negative 5, so when I switch it, it's going to become positive, because a negative, negative 5 would be positive, right? And then positive 2 is going to switch to negative. So not only are we switching the numbers, we're also changing the signs with this one. Okay, so it was negative 5, 2. Now it's going to be negative 2, 5. So we start from the origin. Negative 2 means left 2. Up 5 is right here. And so that's going to be my new E. That'll be E prime. And if we're looking, I still like to make the line up and down. And if I'm looking, E's on this side, E prime's on this side. It does look like we flipped it over the line. So that works. Okay? So then we just kind of work our way around. But I really think for you guys, especially if you're struggling, finding the points and using the rule is going to help. So let's take a look at R. So the coordinates of R will be negative 4, negative 1. So what's that going to look like when we switch it?
It's going to be 1 and 4.
Yeah, so 1 and 4. So we switch them and change them to positive. So I'm going to be over here, go right 1, up 4, and I'm going to switch where that is. I'm just going to take that off. over 1 up 4 right here. And so that was r that we were working on, so this is going to be r prime. And it's kind of hard to see unless you tilt it, so I'm like, okay, so r's over here, r prime's on that side. It does look like it got flipped over the line. I think we're okay. And then, and when if you're writing these out, you might actually label them. This was U, this one was E, that one was R. So you remember which ones you've done. And then the last one is M. So what are the coordinates of M?
-2.
-2, -1. So when I switch it, what are we going to get?
1 and 2.
1, 2. So remember, we got to switch places and change the signs. So 1, 2 would be right 1 up 2. And that's where my M prime is going to go. And then we just take all of these points and connect them, and hopefully we'll be able to see that reflectional symmetry. It should look the same on both sides of the line, and look at that, it does. We talked about these always kind of look like butterflies. And so when you're done, if you don't have that symmetry, if it doesn't look the same on both sides where you could fold it on top of itself, you'll know that something went wrong. So that's how you do the line y equals -x. Okay? Lots to remember. Basically, we're just flipping it over the line like we did with the patty paper, but it gets a little bit more technical when we've got exact points. It's on the coordinate grid. Okay, so let's turn to number 5. And I'm going to teach you guys some new lines, although I think these are easier than the ones we just did. So it says we're going to make a reflection across the line x equals 1. So the line x equals 1 basically is the line where all of the x coordinates are 1. So if I go over here, here's 1 on my x-axis. So all the points that line up with this are going to be x equals 1. So I have 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, 1, -1, 1, -2. So this right here, I'm going to do that in red, make my line in red. This is my line, x equals 1. It's where all the x coordinates are 1. And it's a vertical line, and then all we have to do is flip these points over the line. There is kind of a rule for this, but I think it gets more complicated. If it's just a vertical or horizontal line, I think it's going to be easier for you guys just to flip it over. So y is just going to stay where it is. Where is x going to go? What are the coordinates of x? If I take this x that's 1 to the right of the line, and I make it 1 to the left of the line right here, what are the coordinates?
0, 1.
So it'd be 0, 4. Okay, so 0, 4. So if they asked you that, you could tell them what that was. So for me, I was just getting a location, and then we connect it like this. And then this point, what does that say? W is here. And it's, I like to look with reference to the line. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 units to the right of the line. So I need to go 4 units to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're looking at this red line that I drew, not the x-axis, or the y-axis, which can get confusing. And so I just went 4 to the left, and so that coordinate would be at -3, 0. And we can connect that up, and so we have sort of that butterfly thing going on again. It's the same shape on both sides of the line. X equals 1.
And that was W prime.
And that's W prime. So we should label that. And Y prime are in the same place. So there's the Y. You could also label that Y prime because that's the reflection image. Okay, so we're going to do one more with this vertical line, but I think these are easier because they're vertical. I think the slanty lines are the harder ones. So I think this will be easier for you guys. So if I go over to number 6, they want us to put the line at x equals -2. So if I go on my x-axis and find -2, that's right here. This is where -2's at. And so we're going to draw a vertical line where all of the points have an x coordinate of -2. So -2, -5, -2, -4, -2, 3, -2, 4. All of those points, okay, have -2. So that's what that vertical line is going to look like. And then we have to flip all of the points over that line. So with this, rather than having a fancy rule where we're trying to do lots of algebra, we're just going to flip the points over the line. So this is point, does that say I or J? I think it's an I. So point I is 1 to the left. So I'm going to go 1 to the right and make I prime. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And then down here where K is, it's 2 to the left. So I'm going to stay at the same height and go 2 to the right and make K prime. So now I could make this portion. And then I just need to figure out where to put T. So T is over here. What are the coordinates of where T is going to go when we flip it?
0, -2.
So it'll be, so if it's 2 right here, it's going to be right here. What are the coordinates of that point from the origin? So you'd go left, 1, 2, 3, 4,
0,
down 1. And the reason I ask is because when you guys get tested on standardized tests, a lot of times they're going to ask you, what are the coordinates of T prime? So let's say T prime is going to be where, and you have to be able to measure it out and say, oh, it's going to be at 4, -1, and tell them where that's going to go. And you would want to sit with your paper and actually draw it out first, and then locate that and answer the question. That the main idea is still being able to do this reflection. Okay? So that's just a couple of ways you can have some vertical lines that are not the y-axis, but they're parallel to the y-axis. It works the same. Now we're going to do some horizontal lines. So it says a reflection across y equals 1. So I'm now going to go to my y-axis and find 1. So here's 1. So it's all the points that are going to be on this line that have a y coordinate of 1. So like 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1. They're all on the line that goes through 1 on the y-axis. So it looks like that. And when we reflect it, it's above the line. We reflect it, it's going to go below. So let's first just go through and get all the points. So point L is 2 above the line. I'm going to keep that lined up and go 2 below and make that L prime. And then over here where V is 1, 2, 3, 4 points above the line. Remember that these have to be the same distance to be a true reflection. I've got to go 4 points below. 1, 2, 3, 4. And there would be my V prime. So I can start connecting things if that helps you visualize. Then we could go over and do E. So E is also 4 above. So we'll go 4 below. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's E prime. So I can connect that. And then we just need to do H. So H is 1, 2, 3 units above the line. So we have to go 3 units below. 1, 2, 3. And that's where H is going to go. So remember that they have to be the same distance from the line. So one of the cool things about doing this on the graph is you can just kind of count this little squares to get that distance. And then those distances are also going to be perpendicular, which means that these have to line up this way to be perpendicular to the line. Okay, so if this were a standardized test and I asked you, okay, here's this, we're going to reflect it across y equals 1, and they ask you, what are the coordinates of E prime? And they gave you like blanks like this. What would we put in there for E prime? What are those coordinates?
4, -4.
So you remember you're starting from the origin. -3. And it gets confusing because your brain wants to count from this line that we drew, but to do the coordinates, we're still going from the origin. Over 4, down 3. So that's where that point goes. So these are the kinds of questions that can show up, just so you know. They might ask you where those coordinates are. I would still do this. I would draw it all out first, and then do this. And when it's on a computer, when it's on your iPad screen, it gets a little confusing, but you will have paper and graph paper. And they also allow us to have a transparency, those clear plastic sheets with a marker, where you could actually trace this from the screen and go ahead and reflect it and just put it over your iPad screen, which is also kind of a cool thing that they let us do now. And so that allows you to kind of get it without having to draw the whole thing again and lose all of your time. Okay, so let's do one more of these. I'll zoom out so we can kind of see what we did on 7, because 7 and 8 are going to be similar. So we're going to have a reflection across the line y equals -3. So I'm going to go on my y-axis to -3, 1, 2, 3, and make a horizontal line, because that's where all of the points are that have a y coordinate of -3. 1, -3, 2, -3, 3, -3. They're all at that level. And then we're going to reflect it over that line, which means we're going to flip it. So z is on the line, so that means z and z prime are in the same place. We don't have to change that one. Yay! I love when that happens. We don't have to change anything. It just stays the same. Okay, then we'll go over here, and this is point I. I don't know why they're using so many i's, but it's 2 below the line, so when I flip it, I'm going to make it 2 above the line. So there's my I prime. And so you could start connecting those if you want to. Connect that back to z. And then I have to do v. So v is also 2 below the line, or no, 2 above the line. You get v prime. And then you can connect to make your triangle. I do think these are easier also, because you're working with horizontal and vertical lines. However, the tricky part is remembering whether it's a horizontal or vertical line, and figuring out where to put the line is the tricky piece. Okay.
Can I go to the bathroom?